Hey, we're back on Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy, Monday, November 28th. Big game breakdown, Monday Night Football, a good one. Green Bay and Philly. And we'll hit the MAC title game. Championship weeks here. We'll hit Friday with the MAC with Western Michigan and Ohio coming up. And we'll get to college football and deep dive in Michigan, Ohio State, and all the rundown in the deep dive, all that coming up. We start in the NFL as we always do on a Monday. The bettors had a lot to be thankful for over the Thanksgiving weekend. The first 11 favorites won outright, and they all covered the teasers going into the late games, Teddy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the books were saved by the late games because both the 3 afternoon games and the 1 evening game, the underdog covered all 4 of those contests. But going into that game, do you want to talk about teaser liability? You want to talk about parlay liability? It was off the charts. And even with the books winning the late decisions, still probably the worst week of the season, the NFL season, for the sportsbook. When you think about it, the public won on the Titans. Big line move. They won on the Chargers, +1 to -2.5. They won on the Falcons, a huge public play. Those 3 brutal for sportsbook. Then the Saints and overcash. The Dolphins land right on the number. The Giants beat up on the Browns and cover late. The Ravens get the money on that crazy final play. And that's, of course, after Detroit and Pittsburgh cover on Thanksgiving, plus that Cowboys over. We'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, I know the bettors were itching to bet against Scott Tolzien at the first opportunity. And, I mean, the books got clobbered on that game. So, clobbered on Thanksgiving, clobbered in the early games on Sunday, I should say. Not a good week for the house, even with the late games going in their favor.
Yes. How about the Titans game? And this is a good tweet. I think it's Nathan Janke, it's pronounced, Pro Football Focus. Look, the Chicago wide receivers dropped 10 passes in that game, including 2 in the end zone that would have won the game. You want to talk about money changing hands there. The books get middled. Everyone cashes the ticket with the Titans, teasers, straight bets, whatever. And the Bears should have won the game after being down 27-7.
I mean, let's give Matt Barkley credit.
Yeah.
Or maybe we worry about that Titans pass defense a little bit because once Chicago got hot, Tennessee had absolutely no answers. But when you look at the graphic that shows the tweet from Nate Janke, the most drop passes in the Pro Football Focus era. That's the last 10 years for any team in any week. You talk about 2 on the final drive. There was at least, I remember seeing another one in the end zone. I think 2 more in the end zone. Brutal. But the Titans remember the Titans opened as low as -1, and the game middled when they won by 6. You understand? It closed as high as -7, mostly 6.5, lands right on 6. Chicago had the chance to get that and to give the books the one saving game of the early games. All those shots to the end zone couldn't get it done. And Titans go into their bye week as a legit playoff contender.
Niners showed some fight on the road, too, and that lands on the numbers. Kaepernick couldn't get in, stuffed at the 2-yard line.
Sure, exactly. Let's give San Fran credit for a team that has shown a lot of quit this year. Didn't quit. Kaepernick had a really good game. But instead, they tried to come through the back door, couldn't get there. Instead, it ends up being a bad result for the house, landing right on the number of 7, which means either, mostly the line shoppers have a chance to win, and everyone else gets their money back.
Yeah, there was some good tweets about the bookmakers are happy now that the Browns are on a bye week because it's money against them every week. The effort was there, but silly turnovers, and the Giants get the money.
Yeah, another team, they tried to come through the back door. The effort was there. They didn't get there. A couple of bright spots for Cleveland besides the effort. Corey Coleman caught a touchdown pass. That guy's going to be good. You don't like to say this too much in November before next year, but I'm telling you, get ready to be betting on the Cleveland Browns next year if Hugh Jackson gets to keep his job.
Yeah, good point again, but the bookmakers got bailed out there at the end because things are really adding up. It was going to be a bad week, but what happened with those late games, very key, and we'll get to Sunday night.
Let me just jump in because the books were in great shape when the Raiders, or not in great shape, but they were in much better shape when the Patriots were losing and the Raiders were losing. The Raiders blew that big lead because that would have killed all the teasers. Instead, Pats cover on the teaser, Raiders covers on the teaser. This was for sure the worst week of the year in terms of playing out the recreational bettors on teasers in the NFL.
Good point there. Time for bad beats. Thanksgiving, the afternoon game. Looked like a sure under with the Cowboys and the Redskins 34 fourth quarter points.
Yeah, and this is like all the other ones we're going to talk about. Bad for the books. That total got bet up 5 freaking points for a national TV game on Thanksgiving. And when you talk about a national TV game on Thanksgiving, that's the game that pretty much everybody who bets the NFL is betting in one way or the other. So the total gets bet up 5 points. It's 17-6 at the start of the fourth. And then the 5 TD explosion. Brutal beat for the books and a bad beat for anyone who had the under.
And this is a bad beat too. You definitely call the Raiders a bad beat because they're up 17 points with the ball when Carr dislocates his pinky. He has to come out of the game. The momentum swung to Carolina's favor. They scored 25 straight points.
Yeah, well, they should have had 28. They kept on going for 2. And
that was ridiculous.
Yeah. 4 consecutive touchdowns for the Panthers after Carr dislocates his finger. And he wasn't the same QB afterwards. For at least a quarter and a half after that. He finally got hot at the end of the game. But he really, talk about an unhandicappable momentum changer. It was. And of course, Oakland came back. They had a 2-point conversion to tie. They had first and goal inside the 2, with inside 2 minutes to win. But Carr wasn't right on that last drive. They had to settle for the field goal in a game where they were laying 3.5. Yeah, tough beat if you had Oakland.
Then another one, maybe the game of the year Sunday night. The Chiefs beat the Broncos in overtime. If you had the under, oh my God, it was scoreless with 6 minutes left in the second quarter, and it goes over, and then it's 17-16 Denver. KC's out of timeouts with 3 minutes. They pick up the first down. That's pretty much it. And they hit Fowler for 70 yards.
Yeah, and really, if Fowler falls down and doesn't score that touchdown, the Broncos probably end up winning. That being said, it's hard to say what the bad beat was in that game. Kansas City scored 9 points off a safety. Okay, it's hard to overcome that. But going into overtime, the Broncos had outgained the Chiefs 6.7 to 3.3 yards per play. It doesn't get greater than that. They're outgaining them 2-1 on every snap. Denver's up 1. They're just trying to get the first down and run out the clock. They score a 76-yard touchdown, and now they're covering. And then the Chiefs is 4th and 10. They get 11. The only guy who made any plays all night was Tyreek. Then of course the last second, is he in or is he down at the 1-inch line with the clock running? Insanity. It didn't matter which side covered. It was going to be a bad beat either way. And by the way, the ruling of he was in, yeah, that dead nuts under game, as you mentioned, went over the total. Total closed at 40.
Bad job by Kubiak. You can't try a 62-yard field goal there. You got to take the tie and get out of there.
I'm with you.
That's a bad move. That was a bad move.
And I don't often say that in terms of I agree with you sometimes, Paulie, but I'm with you 100% in terms of you cannot take that risk in that situation, given that there's only a minute left. And if you miss the field goal, you're basically giving Kansas City a layup, which they ended up hitting, boink, boink, off the upright.
No, I know, yeah, and your defense is gassed too. Bad bets, plenty of them. How about the Bills? Bet up to 8.5 against Jacksonville. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags had some bad luck. They should have had a pass interference call on Gilmore. They had some bad decisions. Bradley's got to call a timeout, set up the biggest play of the game instead of rushing it. And yet, Jacksonville still the right side in that game. Buffalo, they can't be laying more than a TD just yet. As you mentioned, bet up from 7.5 to 8.5. That was a bad bet.
All right, this was a great sweat. Patriots were a bad bet. Once the Gronk news came out that he was going to play, they bet the Patriots up to 9, and then Gronk got hurt his back in the first quarter. Gronk and Bennett banged up, didn't do anything, and oh man, LeGarrette Blount almost got in at the 2-yard line.
Yeah, I had a Jets ticket in my pocket. I was scared shitless.
Oh.
That's the worst scenario. Because remember, after the Fitzpatrick turnover, okay, the Jets are covering wire to wire that game. New England was not the right side. At any way, shape, or form. But the Patriots score a late touchdown to take the lead, and then now you got to worry about a Fitzpatrick turnover, and he does it deep in his own territory, and you're in a situation where it's 3rd and 2. If LeBlanc gets stopped, they're going to kick a field goal, and if you have plus 7.5 or plus, if you didn't bet on game day, you bet it early, you're screwed. But if Blount gets the first down and gets knocked down, they're just going to take a knee. But then Blount breaks through and he gets down to the 2. I couldn't believe they knocked him out. It was a sweat and a half. Jets get the money. So Patriots go in the bad bet category, not the Jets in the bad beat category.
Yes, all right, up next, big game breakdown. Monday Night Football in the MAC title game. Western Michigan playing for a spot likely in the Cotton Bowl. and we'll get to college in the deep dive on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, time for Big Game Breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Monday Night Football, Green Bay at Philly. Eagles 4. There's some 3.5s available. 47.5 the total. Packers still trying to tuck a good game, but can they play one? Here's McCarthy. Quote, when you get into spots where we've been the last month, where you have heavy injuries with more particular guys' roles and responsibilities, the description of what they're doing each week is adjusted. How do you max that out? You have a role player that's usually playing 25 to 30 plays, but now he's playing 60. We have a number of those situations on defense. How are we offsetting that? It's a challenge, particularly when you continue to have injuries in the game. Rodgers trying to keep it positive here. I mean, after the way they played all season, he should be drug tested, that he thinks they can run the table. Look at this quote, Teddy.
Well, yeah, I mean, for Green Bay, they're certainly talking the talk. You know, Rodgers, I feel we can run the table. I really do. The offense is starting to click a little bit more. We just got to get together a game where we're more consistent from the first half to the last. We've been, I think, getting closer to that. We've really been clicking at times in the past few games. But then, of course, we have the quote from Tom Silverstein from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel talking about some of those Packer injuries. Quote, during parts of their demoralizing 42-24 loss to Washington on Sunday night at FedEx Field, the Packers were playing with third, fourth, and fifth string cornerbacks, a fourth-string inside linebacker, second and third-string guards, a second-string running back, and a fifth-string receiver. The injuries worse right now for Green Bay on the defensive side of the football than the offense. So maybe what Rodgers is saying about that offense, maybe it's real. Of course, the Eagles' defense is still pretty good, but this division is not out of reach for Green Bay. Remember, the Lions are 7-4, right? They've still got road games at New Orleans. They got a road game at the Giants. They got a road game at Dallas. Plus, they got to play Green Bay week 17. The Vikings are 6-5. They got Dallas this week. They have to travel to Lambeau in week 16. So if Green Bay can go on a little run, they could even lose again. They don't have to run the table. 9 wins could take this division at 4-6. Packers get a little something going. They're live to make a late season run.
Eagles not giving Wentz much help. They lack talent and depth at wide receiver. A ton of issues with drops. Matthews is out, and Sproles is probable. Rib injury. Aguilar, number 1 draft pick in 2015, needs to be the go-to wide receiver. That hasn't been the case. 0 catches at Seattle. 1 major drop and a formation penalty that wiped out a touchdown. This is a, look at this quote. Here's Aguilar after losing at Seattle. Quote, I can't get out of my own head. I'm pressing so much. I'm worried about so many things. It's such a selfish thing that I need to stop. I need to give my energy to my teammates in this organization and not myself, because I'm feeling so pressured to make every single thing. I did it to myself. I started getting in my own head and trying so hard and thinking about being perfect. And then miscues were there. And when they were exposed, I let it just eat at me, end quote. So you got his comment about the drops and the issues, and then Matthews can't catch the ball either. I mean, what's Wentz supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a problem, obviously, for Philadelphia. And they've lost a good handful of games where all they needed was one guy to make one play. You know, their defense has obviously exceeded expectations this year. The defense has gone from being a bottom-tier unit to being a well above-average NFL defense. Their special teams have been great this year, and yet Philadelphia is still a last-place team. Why? Well, let's talk about the issue, obviously, with throwing the football and having receivers making plays downfield. And when your number 1 guy, Nelson Aguilar, has lost his confidence. I mean, listen to what Frank Reich is talking about, the offensive coordinator for Philadelphia. Quote, Nelson Aguilar has great skills, not good skills. He has great skills as a wide receiver. This guy can beat press coverage. That's gold in this league, if you can beat press coverage. If you can create separation, if you can get a good release versus press coverage, that's gold to a quarterback and a play caller. And Nelson, really, he excels in those areas. And yet, the guy's not being productive, and he hasn't been productive at any stage in his NFL career. They need him to step up against a Packers secondary that, as we mentioned, has been riddled with key injuries in recent weeks.
We'll get back to this game with the play of the day coming up. There are 8 official championship games this weekend in college football. 9 unofficial ones if you count Oklahoma State Bedlam for the Big 12 championship. We're going to preview all 9 here on SportsBit, the type of in-depth coverage you expect. Yes, starting right here. Friday night, ESPN 2, 4 o'clock Pacific, MAC title game. Ohio against Western Michigan. Western Michigan is 18.5. PJ Fleck, 1-11 his first season, 8-5, 8-5, and now 12-0. If they beat Ohio, likely they get the New Year's Six bowl game. They're headed to the Cotton Bowl, Teddy.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Listen to what Fleck said after his team routed Toledo in their regular season finale, beating the Rockets by 20, a pretty good Rockets team by 20 points. Quote, to go from 1-11 to 12-0, I don't even know how many teams have ever done that in a 3-year span. I have no idea. I'd like to know what those players accomplished tonight is historical. So now all the pressure is on Western Michigan. You know, they win, and as you mentioned, they get to go to the Cotton Bowl most likely. But if they lose, not so much. Now, this isn't just a small school having a fluky season, Paul. This team has legitimate playmakers. A quarterback, Zach Terrell, more than 3,000 passing yards, 71.7% completions. What about the TD to interception ratio? How about 30-1? That's pretty good. You know, the running back, Javarian Franklin, 1,266 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns. The running back, Jamari Bogan, 787 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Oh, that's 20 TDs on the ground and 2,000 yards with their top two backs. And, of course, this is a chance for the nation to see the wide receiver, Corey Davis, the all-time NCAA leader, 5,068 receiving yards and 50 career receiving touchdowns. Before you say, some MAC receiver, they can't do anything. You know, hey, I remember a guy named Antonio Brown coming out of Central Michigan, not Western Michigan, who's turned out to be a pretty good NFL receiver. Watch for Corey Davis, perhaps, to be a factor on Sundays.
Well, two things here, and this is part of the handicap. Number one, it's a big step down for him after the epic game against Toledo. You're taking on Ohio. My God, look at the point spread. Number two, there were several reports out there that Fleck was taking the Purdue job. So now he's got to put the genie back in the bottle and say, no, I'm going to wait till the season's over. I'm not talking to anybody. Number one, that's a mistake if he takes the Purdue job. He can do a lot better than that. Number two, I hope he's telling the truth, because I don't want him being distracted with this game coming up.
You know, and at some schools, you see the distraction with a school's had a great season and then the coach is gone, is flirting with other jobs. You see it as a huge distraction. We saw it for Houston, in fact. Yeah, this past Saturday. That's not always the case. And especially in a situation like Western Michigan, nobody expects PJ Fleck to be there long term. They knew the season they were having, this guy's not going to be back. He's going to get a big-time job. And their opponent, Ohio U, even if Western, and Western's a team with that level of playmakers they have, we've seen them perform very well in some questionable spots this season. For Ohio U, I question if they're even good enough. I mean, they're certainly a veteran team. This is the 7th time in 8 years they're going to be going to a bowl game. They did upset Toledo last year, this year, by 5, plus 15.5 in that game on the road in their toughest MAC test this season. But the quarterback, Quentin Maxwell, he didn't become the starter until game 7. He's one of these upside guys, but gosh, 55.9% completion, 6 touchdown passes. They can't trade points with Western Michigan. If the Broncos get going here, this game's going to be a rout.
Yes, agree with you on that one. Remember, this game is Friday night. So when you watch this, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Up next, the deep dive. Recap the crazy weekend in college football, and we'll get to the play of the day. We are 33-18 on the football season. Another winning week. Let's keep it going on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts and shop for lines at SBRodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.
Pauly and Teddy back on SportsBit. Betting Insight today. Play of the day coming up. The deep dive. College football recap now. We'll start with bad beats. Central Florida plus 12.5 against South Florida. South Florida won 48-31. We're going to talk about this game twice, because it wasn't just Central Florida bettors sweating at the end, but guys across the counter as well.
Oh, not sweating, Pauly. Swearing at the end. Okay, so it's 41-31, all right? South Florida is laying 12.5. Central Florida's got the ball, 4th and 16 from their own 10. There's a minute 50 left. They got sacked. So, South Florida, what are you supposed to do in that situation? You're supposed to kneel down twice, end the game. But instead, they ran 2 plays. Dernis Jackson scored a touchdown with 11 seconds left to cover the point spread. Ouch! That's a swear, not a sweat. Well, it's a swear and a sweat.
You saw that in a lot of games this weekend. These rivalry games, Florida State did it too. Instead of just running it out and taking the knee, they run it in. How about Pitt? Look at this. Pitt, bad bet. Bet up to 26. And we did this the entire season, Teddy. Every week they bet the under in the Pitt games.
Every week. Bettors were somehow backing a defense that allowed 61 points. But, Pauly, that wasn't the only bad bet this week. There were a whole bunch of them. How about Indiana? They were bet up from 17.5 to 21.5 over Purdue. They won the game 26-24. They never had command. They were lucky to escape with a straight-up victory in a game where they were favored by more than 3 touchdowns after the huge line move.
Yeah, Pitt 76-61, one of 3 teams to drop at least 75. More on that coming up. Louisville steamed up to 20.5 against Kentucky. They lost at home.
Oh, my God. Bettors made big money early on the Cardinals this season, but boy, they gave plenty of it back late. Louisville, maybe some of its bubble burst, but at the end, it kind of looked like that team was a fraud, only finished with 1 win over an opponent with a winning record. What about UNLV, dude? They were betting the Rebels here in Vegas, -7.
One of the worst bets of the season. A bad UNLV team at home in a rivalry game, bet up to 10 in some spots against Nevada, who they fired Pauly and yesterday after they won. Lane 10, UNLV lost at home 45-10. Never in the game. A awful Nevada team. The columnist for in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Ed Graney, said one of the low points in UNLV football. That's saying something. That was an embarrassment.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of low points in UNLV football. Bet up to, as you mentioned, 10 over Nevada. Lose a game by 35. That's one of those what the F were they thinking type of wagers. How about Navy SMU? The under got bet 69.5 down to 65. It's like Pitt. They're betting pace, not offensive efficiency. Guess what? The midshipmen topped the total by themselves. As you mentioned, another 75-point outburst. And how about this for a stat? Did anyone pay attention to Navy in November? They played 4 November games. You know how many punts Navy had in those 4 November games? 1, 2. Count them. Twice! 2 punts in 4 games, and they're betting them under. Go for it. They'll do it again in the bowl game. Watch.
Yeah, sorry. Neil Matalolo, however you say it, is a hell of a coach. Bad for the books. Clemson bet up to 27.5 against South Carolina. They went 56-7. They worried about Dabo maybe taking it easy, looking ahead to the ACC title game. Rivalry game again, run it up.
Yeah, he sure saw that his team was sharp and ready. Let's see, Middle Tennessee State bet from 12.5 to 16.5 over Florida Atlantic. They win 77-56. Charlie Partridge fired after the game. Easy to see why FAU's looking for a new coach next year.
It's always Alabama money from the public on a Saturday. They beat Auburn by 18. And how about this day? You mentioned the number on Navy. Alabama defense, 0. They didn't allow a touchdown in the month of November. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Oh, let's talk about South Florida and Central Florida again. Remember, South Florida got bet from 9.5 up to 12.5 over UCF. They win the game by 17. And thanks to that late TD, cover the number, bad for the house. The first real battle for local recruiting turf between Willie Taggart and Scott Frost. Frost found out how much ground he has to make up in that war.
How about Butch Jones? Huh? How about that bet under 10 wins with Tennessee? Oh, my God. Tennessee, Vandy was +10, bet down to +7. They score 45 points on Tennessee. They couldn't stop a nosebleed the last month of the season. Champions of life, right? Oh, what a bad season for Tennessee. That SEC is horrible.
The last 3 games, the Vols defense allowed 118 points and 1,886 yards. Despite playing Vandy, Missouri, and Kentucky, arguably the 3 of the SEC's weakest teams. And then, of course, there was a big one, Pauly. Let's talk Michigan, Ohio State. Bad for the books. Not a bad bet, not a bad beat, not a bad bet. This was bad for the house.
Yep, and heavy money on the Wolverines. Backers had the right side. You had to sweat out the 4th down touchdown in the first overtime. Horrible beat if you had the under with the shenanigans there. It was an epic game, and I have Harbaugh's back. Now, you're getting a lot of tweet. It was a bad call. Barrett's helmet got to the 15, not the ball. They blew that. They only called 2 penalties on Ohio State. Nevertheless, people tweeting at you, you're honest. You went to Michigan, but still, you've bet against them before.
I could care less. That's the beauty of it. People think I'm like this rah-rah Michigan guy. Yes, I'm a Michigan alumni. I graduated from the University of Michigan, but I do not give a shit, especially when they cover. I bet against them in the national championship game a couple years ago in hoops versus Louisville. I bet against them in the non-national championship game when they beat Ryan Leaf and got a share of the title in the year they would have been 14-point dogs to Nebraska. I'm not a fan. I'm a bettor. Plus, Michigan, they screwed me on my financial aid my senior year, and their self-imposed sanctions took down the banners from the Fab 5 era. That was a team I loved. That was when I was a fan. Not anymore. Congrats to Ohio State for extending that long winning streak against the Wolverines, even though Michigan got the money.
Some poor decisions in that game. Spate with the bad shoulder. I don't know why you throw from your own end zone when that was 3-0 with 4 minutes left in the second quarter, and it goes over.
Another one, yeah. It flies over the total with room to spare.
Listen, Ohio State's got a great resume, and they're number 2 in the country. But they against Wisconsin and Michigan, out of 120 minutes, they led for 10.
And there will be controversy, however it's going to play out with that Ohio State situation. You can smell it already.
Yeah, Charlie Strong out, Tom Herman in at Texas, and LSU keeps Eddie O. What do you think?
I'm an Orgeron fan. I think it's a good move for LSU. I think it's a good move for, everything's a good move at this stage of the season. Watch Tom Herman. I think he'll fit in Texas, maybe better than Charlie Strong in that regard, obviously, and a heck of a coach. And that's probably the better job for him. If I'm a coach, let's see, I could play in the SEC West, or I could play in the Big 12 and be the dominant team. I'll play in the Big 12 and be the dominant team. Right decision for Tom Herman. He's going to get rich doing it.
You got that right. All right, back on track. A winning week last week. 27-15 run, 33-18-1 on the football season. Back to Monday Night Football. What are we doing, Mr. Covers?
Let's take a shot here with Green Bay. Game number 275, the Green Bay Packers +4. This team's not dead yet. They can lose and still cover. The Eagles, a last-place team that probably shouldn't be laying more than a field goal. Give me Green Bay in a must-win situation. I know they blew it last week. Let's try them again this week. Packers +4. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. It was a great week of action, and we'll be back. Again, we're going to hit all these conference championship games in college football. More of that Tuesday show. Jimmy Vaccaro, recap Monday Night Football, some NBA. It's coming up. We'll talk to you Tuesday. Thanks for watching on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.